Hi, this is Ray from the Tower E-Bike Repair Shop. Today we're going to be talking about how to adjust the brakes on your Rad Runner, maybe how to stop the brakes from squeaking. Right now we'll just get into adjusting the brakes right out of the box. I'm lucky enough to have this Park Tool stand so I can get the bike up to a very comfortable level for me to work. Hopefully you can see where I'm working. So the first thing I do when I get into a brake adjustment is I want to center the caliper. I've already checked to make sure that the axle is square in the dropouts. If you haven't done that before you start your brake adjustment procedure, you put your bike back down on the ground, you loosen your axle nut or your quick release, you apply some pressure down on the bike to square up that axle, and then you tighten it back in. From there, we're going to go into centering the caliper. So I'll make sure first off that the bracket mounts are tight. So this is your brake caliper mounting bracket. We want to make sure that it's tight to the frame or the fork. And then I've got these two bolts here that are actually holding the caliper to the bracket. We're going to loosen those, and then I like to pull or actuate the caliper, and that'll squeeze the brake rotor and kind of line the caliper up with the rotor. From there, I'm going to gently snug the bottom, gently snug the top, and this gently snug is I'm just taking the slack out of the bolt to keep the caliper from moving around. But if you just tighten one of these up really tight, then what's going to happen is your caliper is going to move to one side or another, and you just kind of blown your adjustment. So then I'm going to go and snug a little bit more, and then I'll go and do a final tension. So now the plane of my brake pad's lined up with the plane of this rotor. From there, I'm going to check and see if there's any rub. This brake caliper was pretty well adjusted, so there isn't a whole lot, but if I could go to the inner pad and I can either dial it in or out depending on the proximity of the inner pad to the rotor. And so if it's dragging, you're going to go counterclockwise. That'll bring the pad out away from the rotor. If it's not dragging and you're squeezing the caliper and the brake rotor is moving, deflecting inward, then you need to tighten this in, bring that pad closer to the inside of the rotor. Once we got our inner pad adjusted, and when we squeeze the lever, there isn't any deflection, we get a nice firm grip, then we'll go ahead and adjust cable length. This is pretty close, so I'll just make sure that this cable is tight, and then I can go in on this barrel adjuster and just dial this out, and then don't forget to get the little set nut down on once you get your barrel adjustment, and that'll set your main cable length. And then as you go through wearing through the brake pads, you can then just dial in up here. I'll go ahead and bring this down so my point of view camera can see. You're going to be adjusting this out as the brake pads wear, and probably periodically doing that inner pad adjustment, screwing it in as that inner pad wears. That's what you can expect from for having to adjust your brake pads and adjust your brakes. Now these are mechanical brakes, so they do need a fair amount of adjustment as you ride. I would say probably every 3 to 7 rides you might need to check that inner pad adjustment, especially if you're doing a lot of downhill or a lot of high-speed stopping. And then if you did need to change your brake pads, it's pretty simple on these Tektro Aris brakes. I'm going to go ahead and go back up with the stand here. So basically all you would do is take you could either take these two bolts off here and remove the bracket and the caliper, or you could just remove the caliper, and then you end up removing this pin here, which is tough to see, but it's this little guy right here. It's a cotter pin, and it's bent over on the back, and then these pads just slide right out the inside portion of the caliper. So it's very simple to replace brake pads. They usually come with an extra spring, and some kits come with an extra cotter pin. It's always a good idea to use a new cotter pin, but if you don't have a new one, you can reuse this. Just make sure you don't bend it up too bad and you try and save it. What you would do to stop squealing on your brakes, adjust your brakes, and remove your brake pads. And one other thing you could do, other than center up your brake pads with your rotor to stop squealing, is you can sand rotors periodically. So if you notice your rotor's getting a high sheen, very shiny, then you can take some 200 to 220 grit sandpaper and then just chase all the gloss off of the rotor so that you didn't have a bunch of shine. Shiny rotor will tend to squeak. So hopefully that gave you some good information on how to adjust your brakes, how to keep your brakes from squeaking, how to potentially replace your brake pads when it's time. This is Ray at the Tower E-Bike Repair Shop signing off.